guys, Jennifer here with the Family Fudge, and welcome to Bunches of Lunches London Edition. In this week's episode, I'm going to be sharing with you all of our lunches from our first week in the UK. I'm also going to share a little bit about what we've been doing each day. This week has included traveling by planes, trains, and automobiles, as well as visits to famous museums and landmarks, a stranger danger experience, and we also tried out some of the cheapest lunches in London. And disclaimer, you guys, if this audio sounds off, it's because I'm literally doing this voiceover in our Airbnb, which is right next to a big train station. Now, honestly, this has been a very interesting time to be in London. When we planned this trip months ago, we had no idea of how the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth would impact this trip. Things in the city have definitely been a lot more hectic than we were expecting, and a lot of the historical/royal places we were hoping to visit are actually closed. But personally, I've always had a great respect for the Queen, so to be here now and to be able to watch from a distance all of the memorials and the processions going on in the city, I would love to know in the comments down below how many of you guys have ever been to London before, or how many of you guys hope to visit here in the future. Now you guys, before we get into these lunches, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. This week we are even closer to 1 million subscribers on this channel, so thank you for subscribing. Okay guys, now our journey started on Tuesday when right before lunchtime, I was doing some last minute changes to packing. I ended up taking one whole outfit out of each person's suitcase so that they would have more room. And I also decided to take out some of the extra liquids from our liquids bags as well. Now for the lunch today, I did go ahead and pack that ahead of time since food from the airport is not always reliable. For the kids' lunches, I packed them a reusable Ziploc bag. Each of them got 1 or 2 PB&Js. I also packed them a small apple and an orange, which is totally fine to travel with as long as they finish it before you get off the plane. Next, I also packed them some baby carrots with some hummus for dipping. And then of course, this was almost a 9-hour flight, so I ended up packing lots more snacks and treats as well. For each of the kids, I also found these collapsible water bottles on Amazon. That way they could fill them up after they go through security and they would have plenty of water on the plane. And then you guys, we were off to the Orlando airport. Now, I am happy to report that going through security was totally fine. Our liquids bags were fine, and all of these snacks that I packed were fine. I didn't have any trouble getting those through security. In fact, they didn't even ask us to take them out of our backpacks. Now, to get to the UK, we decided to fly on Virgin Atlantic, and we also decided to pay a little bit extra for what's called Economy Delight. With Economy Delight, you're supposed to get a little bit more leg room, and most importantly, you get to pick out your seats because I wanted to make sure that I was going to be able to sit with my kids. Also on Virgin Atlantic, we were provided a blanket and headphones, which was really nice. Surprisingly, we all thought the plane was really cold, especially when we were trying to sleep, so those extra blankets really came in handy. And then even though we brought headphones, their headphones that were provided were also really convenient. We were able to watch movies of all kinds. They also had TV shows, games, music, and there was even a camera that would let you look outside the plane. Now, for this flight, I was really glad that I packed plenty of extra snacks for the kids because for some of my picky eaters, they really did not like the food on board. there were only two choices: a vegan shepherd's pie or cheesy chicken and rice. We ended up all ordering the cheesy chicken and rice, which I thought was pretty good, even though the kids didn't like it. This dinner also came with a little bread roll, some butter, and a brownie. Now, pretty much after dinner, it was lights out. This was kind of a red-eye flight for us. And even though we had blankets and we had pillows, we all had a lot of trouble sleeping. Okay guys, now that brings me to Wednesday. And at this point, we were still on the plane. Just before we arrived at Heathrow Airport, breakfast was served. This was a little chocolate croissant, a yogurt, and a breakfast bar. Now this breakfast was actually really good. Everybody enjoyed this one. Okay guys, so that brings me to our whole stranger danger experience. So we landed at Heathrow, we got through immigration, and before we left the airport, we wanted to make sure to use the bathroom. But because we had all of the luggage and there were 6 people standing there, we did this in shifts. So first, I took the kids with me to the bathroom while my husband waited with the luggage. Then when we were all done, my husband went to use the bathroom while the kids and I stayed with all of the luggage. So the kids and I are standing there in this super busy airport. We're all really tired because for us, it felt like 3 a.m. All of a sudden, I see this man, this old man, and he's kind of looking at us funny, like he wants to talk to us. So he walks up and starts speaking directly to Griffin. And if you guys are new here, Griffin is my youngest. He is 6 years old. So this man just walks up to Griffin and just starts talking to him. He asks Griffin how old he is, where he's from, and he asked if he could give Griffin a funny handshake. Now you guys, something about this interaction immediately did not feel right. And honestly, the kids just stood there in silence. They did not know what to say or how to respond to this man at all. So this guy's just standing there, and then he turns to me and asks me if he could give Griffin a, quote, funny handshake. Like, I don't know what a funny handshake is, and I don't know who this guy is. Now, honestly, I felt conflicted because obviously I don't want to be rude. Maybe this guy was just trying to be nice. But for me, I felt like this guy was giving off weird vibes. So after I said no thank you to this guy, he just stood there for a few minutes. It was really uncomfortable, super awkward, and by that time, thankfully my husband came out of the restroom. And you guys, as soon as this man saw my husband, he just like walked away. It's like he was only willing to approach us when it looked like just a mom and her kids. Now, I would love to know in the comments down below, what would you do in a situation like this, where you're approached by a stranger or your kids are approached by a stranger? Let me know down below. So after that experience, we were finally ready to leave the airport. So we got on a train called the Heathrow Express, and we took it all the way to the Paddington station. Now, once we arrived at the Paddington station, that's where we decided to take an Uber the rest of the way to our Airbnb. And you guys, you can see by this video how tired we were at this point. We were all falling asleep. Now, unfortunately, our Airbnb check-in time wasn't for several more hours, but thankfully we were able to drop off our luggage early. We were able to stop and freshen up a bit, and by this time we were ready for some brunch. And that's when we found GREGGS. Now, I'd actually heard of GREGGS before, and I knew they were really popular. But if you're unfamiliar with GREGGS, it's basically a British bakery chain, and they specialize in something called a sausage roll. But they also have other baked goods, sandwiches, and sweet items, including donuts. So both Lily and Griffin picked out porridge, which I was hoping would be a lot like oatmeal, and it totally was. It was really thick and creamy. Lily had a golden syrup flavored one, which is kind of just like a brown sugar flavored syrup, I think. And Griffin had the apple and cinnamon flavored one. Now for Jackson, he picked an omelet baguette, which was huge, but he said it was really good. And then Kenzie picked something called a sausage bap. And I actually had never heard the term bap before, but I think it means like breakfast sandwich. And then we also picked up a few extra things that we really wanted to try. We got this sausage, bean, and cheese melt. And you guys, anytime I think of sausage and bean, I automatically think of like a breakfast burrito. But in this, it was actually more like baked beans with sausage. Next, we also got one of their vegan sausage rolls. This was really good. And then we also got this little pink cake. Now I thought this was a Tottenham cake, but the lady was like, no, it's a Tottenham cake. And then lastly, we got this sticky toffee muffin, which was really sweet and pretty tasty. After our brunch, our Airbnb still wasn't ready. So we took a little walk down by the water. We were able to see the big Ferris wheel called the London Eye, and we were able to look across the water to Elizabeth Tower, Big Ben, and the whole Westminster Parliament area. Now, when our Airbnb was finally ready, we really just went back and went to sleep. We were so tired. On Thursday, we started and ended the day with one of those hop on, hop off bus tours of London. When it comes to bus tours in the city, there's actually a lot of different companies, and I know it's a touristy thing to do, but honestly, I thought it was awesome. This tour took us by most of the places we were hoping to see, except for Buckingham Palace and Westminster Abbey. Those roads were completely blocked off. And that's because this is what that area looked like on Thursday. Now, I was actually considering getting in this line myself, but I ended up not doing it. And that's because on the news, they were reporting that the line was anywhere between 12 to 18 hours long. And with my bunch of kids, that was just not gonna happen. So back to the bus tour. Because this was a hop on, hop off bus, we could basically get off anywhere we wanted to. So when our bus stopped right in front of Hamleys on Regent Street, I did a little bit of research before we came to London. This store has 7 different floors filled with toys, games, crafts, and of course, a lot of Harry Potter merch. It was seriously so much fun getting to walk through all the different floors and see all the different toys. But since we don't have a ton of space for souvenirs, kids ended up picking just one thing. Mackenzie picked out this stuffed bear, Jackson picked out this thing, I'm not exactly sure what it does, Lily picked out this bear, and Griffin picked out these planes. Then we finished our day with a boat ride down the Thames. I thought it was a really fun and it was a really interesting way to get to see all the buildings from the water. And you guys, our boat ride ended pretty much right next to Westminster Abbey. So we decided to walk over there just to see what we could see. On Friday, since so many of the historical and royal places we wanted to visit were still closed, we decided to make Friday our museum day #1. And you guys, it was on this day where we really learned to use the tube. Now the tube is kind of like what they call the subway here. But I have to say, at first it was really confusing. There are so many different trains going all different directions, and the stations themselves tend to be really busy. One of the things that's really helped us get around the city is an app called City Mapper. City Mapper can tell you exactly how to get from one area to another, how much it's going to cost, so it's really helpful. And you guys, we also learned that on the tube, kids 11 and under get to ride for free, which is really nice.
This is a District Line train to Richmond. The next station is South Kensington.
Now, of course, London is known for having some of the best museums in the world, and many of them are actually completely free to visit. So our first stop was the Natural History Museum. There was so much to see and do. And by this time, we were really ready for some lunch. So it was on this day that we were introduced to the meal deal. And in the UK, a meal deal is kind of what we would call a value meal or a combo deal in the US. And it usually consists of 3 key items. A main, often being a sandwich or some kind of meat pie. It also comes with a snack, which could be fruit, yogurt, chips, aka crisps. And then it also comes with your choice of a drink. And you get all 3 of these things for around £3.50, which is a really good deal. So yes, meal deals are such a great option if you want something quick and cheap, and it seems like a lot of the grocery stores around here offer some kind of meal deal. So for this lunch, all of the kids ended up picking the same sandwich, which was a smoked ham and cheese on malted bread. And I had to look this up because I wasn't exactly sure what malted bread was, but it looks like it's what we would call multi-grain bread in the US. To go with Mackenzie's sandwich, she picked some mixed fruit, and for her drink, she went with a strawberry banana smoothie. Lily also picked a fruit cup, and for her drink, she picked a Capri Sun. And you guys, look how different this looks than what we have in the US. For Jackson's snack, he actually picked some cocktail sausages, which look like little pigs in a blanket. And for his drink, he went with Sprite. Griffin also got the cocktail sausages, but for his drink, he went with a strawberry banana smoothie. After lunch, we made it to the Victoria and Albert Museum. And this was the museum that Mackenzie specifically wanted to go to. She has studied quite a lot about Queen Victoria, and she finds all of that super fascinating. But unfortunately, we didn't know that they would be closing this museum early because of the Queen's memorial. So after about 10 minutes of being there, we got kicked out. On Saturday, we decided to go to another museum on our list, the British Museum. But this time, instead of taking the tube to the museum, we decided to take one of those iconic red double-decker buses. And if I had to pick between the tube or a double-decker bus, I'm definitely going with the double-decker bus. It's definitely not the fastest way to get to where you're going necessarily, but at least we get to see lots of cool buildings on our way. Plus, Griffin, Lily, and Jackson are all free to ride. Now, because the British Museum is so big, it was the only thing on our agenda for this day. And apparently, the British Museum is the world's oldest national public museum, and it was founded way back in 1753. But I do have to say, going to the museum on a Saturday was really busy, which made it a little bit hard to see some of the exhibits. One thing we made sure not to miss was the Rosetta Stone. After the museum, it was time for a late lunch, and since everybody loved their meal deals from the day before, we decided to get it again. And you guys, I do have to say that later in this trip, we are planning to visit other areas in the UK, including Scotland, and while we're there, we are hoping to try some more traditional foods because we don't want to necessarily be eating meal deals this whole trip. So if you have some suggestions on traditional foods that we should try, or some restaurants we should go to while we're here, definitely leave your suggestions down below. For Mackenzie's lunch, she picked a very interesting sounding sandwich. It was a chicken with pork and sage onion stuffing. For her snack, she picked fruit, and for her drink, she picked water. Next, it was Griffin's lunch, and for his sandwich, he picked one called All Day Breakfast. This had bacon, sausage, and ketchup. For his snack, he got cocktail weenies, and for his drink, another strawberry banana smoothie. Next up is Lily's lunch, and she again picked a smoky ham and cheese sandwich. For her snack, she went with salt and vinegar chips, and for her drink, a chocolate milk. For Jackson's main, he picked a sandwich called a bacon buddy. This had bacon and ketchup. That sounds like an interesting combination. For his snack, he went with these big hoop chips or crisps in a barbecue flavor. And for his drink, another Sprite. Now I know I don't always show my lunch, but on this day, I chose a hot food item for my main. This was a chickpea curry slice, and this was so good. It was full of corn and spinach and sweet potatoes. And my husband went with the chicken and mushroom slice. On Sunday, we didn't plan to do too much since we were kind of tired from all the go. But we'd been hearing everywhere that on the next day, since it was going to be the Queen's funeral, that all the businesses and the grocery stores were going to be closed. So we wanted to make sure to stock up on some groceries for that day and the next. We hopped back on the bus to go to an Amazon grocery store. And you guys, if you've never heard of an Amazon grocery store, they are really cool. Those are the ones where you can just walk out. These stores have no registers or cashiers. You basically just walk in, scan your Amazon account with your phone, and then they have some kind of technology in the store that can detect when you take something off or put something back on the shelves. So you can basically just shop how you normally would and then walk out the store, and Amazon will send you a receipt. Now that brings us to Monday, which was really different than all of our days before. And that's because Monday was the actual day of the Queen's funeral service. On this day in the morning, the streets were so quiet. There were a lot less people out and about, and there were a lot less trains and buses on the streets as well. But there were quite a lot of helicopters in the air, and that's because they were filming everything happening on the streets near Westminster Abbey. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I saw the crowds on the news and thought it looked a little intense. So we decided to watch the service from our Airbnb. And you guys, I thought the service was amazing. It wasn't like anything I'd seen in the US before. So many people were involved. It included so much tradition. It really seemed like we were witnessing history. Okay guys, that wraps it up for our first week in London. Stay tuned because in our next video, we're heading to Scotland.